How do developers of action-adventure games use emotion to create an engaging experience? Video games have gone a long way, from the first arcade to virtual reality. Along the way, many things have changed and improved. Many different genres have emerged, and the variety of titles published each year is unlimited. I, in particular, am interested in the action-adventure genre, which is really broad and liberal. But this freedom allows game developers to design a more meaningful game by using features like narrative, visual structure, dramatic gameplay, sound and music to create an innovative game that can keep the player interested from start to finish. In this essay, I will explore two action-adventure games, Journey and Shadow of the Colossus, which have interpreted this genre in their own way to create a more meaningful experience for the player. I look into how the narrative creates a compelling story and how the visual structure and music brings emotion to the player. I will also have a quick look at Zelda and how it has evolved during the years, giving inspiration to other great games like Journey. The action-adventure genre is the broadest and most diverse genre in gaming. Action-adventure games engage both reflexes and problem-solving. An example of a game that has influenced this genre is The Legend of Zelda, which became a successful game due to how it combined elements from different genres to create a compelling hybrid, including exploration, transport puzzles, adventure-style inventory puzzles, and action components. Many games have since used the main component of Zelda. A recent example is that game company's Journey. Zelda has been around for more than 30 years, which has left a significant impact on game developers. With its 18 games, The Legend of Zelda has marked a defining moment in video games. It had free-roaming, non-linear gameplay that required players to explore and not simply push forward. From this example, many games, like Journey and Shadow of the Colossus, started using this innovative technique to create their own engaging open-world games. Journey. Explore the ancient, mysterious world of Journey as you soar above ruins and glide across sands to discover its secrets. Play alone or in the company of a fellow traveler and explore its vast world together. Featuring stunning visuals and a Grammy-nominated musical score, Journey delivers a breathtaking experience like no other. You need to use the power of the scarf to fly and reach different points to earn achievements, just like you would earn achievements in Zelda. The storyline in Journey is very linear and quite short, lasting under 90 minutes. The engaging experience could be compared to watching a film. You are taken through 6 different areas which represent different stages of life. Starting in an unknown world where the only thing you can see is the mountain in the distance, you automatically know that the goal is to reach the peak without any words being spoken, creating a sense of ambition to follow the light, thus engaging the player immediately. The trek to the top brings emotions of uncertainty, joy and carefreeness, juxtaposed with despair and uneasiness. The landscape is a metaphor of our emotional journey in life. This is amplified with the help of the visuals and the music, which creates a meaningful game as it closely relates to our lives, even if it is not apparent the first time you play it. Beyond the literal experience of the journey through the landscape, there is also another story hidden within the game, the hero's journey, which was the first outlined in Joseph Campbell's 1949 book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Our hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are encountered there, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. A single playthrough of Journey represents the first 2 sections: the departure from the ordinary world and the overcoming of trials to receive a blessing. This covers the first 11 steps of the 17 on the hero's journey. The final part of the hero's journey is what you see in the credits, the spirits returning to the beginning and bringing you right back to the main menu, inviting the player to a new journey. However, this time you have the ultimate boon, the knowledge of the game, that you can bring to other people and help them through it. This is the core idea behind Journey, to make your experience in life a blessing for other people, to bestow your knowledge onto others as a boon in order to help them through their own life. Color. Color plays a big part in this game. Each level has a distinct color palette, which creates an apparent divide between each stage. It begins with very natural colors, skin colors, which then transform into more saturated reds and oranges until the 4th level is reached. It is entirely underground. Everything becomes very dark and cold to inflict fear into the player. As you exit the tunnel, you are left at the foot of the mountain. It is snowy and even colder than before, with the majority of the colors being grays and dark blues. As you get nearer to the top, you slow down and eventually fall, but the ancestors bring life back to your body and take you near the mountain peak. Welcomed by the anticipated blue sky, the player is filled with joy and achievement, as this view is only shown at the very last level of the game. As they fly to the peak of the mountain and enjoy these last moments of freedom, they walk into the light and credits roll as you see your soul returning through the path it just walked on. The colors create a very engaging experience throughout the whole game, as they subconsciously influence the player's emotions as they experience different stages. It replaces the need for words and allows the player to read the mood through the colors instead. This is a potent tool which that game company has managed to use powerfully, thereby engaging and manipulating the viewer through different emotional responses. The shapes in the game are solid, heavy, and quite blocky. The architecture is quite old and abandoned, but still in very good shape. It has been worn out from the sand, but when you go inside the tunnel, it is very well preserved. When you stop and look at the architecture for a moment, which engages the player, you will notice just how big and sturdy the material is. This makes the player more at ease, as they know that it will not collapse on them anytime soon, creating an emotive response. It also makes the player feel protected by the strong walls surrounding them. There aren't many sharp objects, except for the guardians that roam the place. They are primarily made out of triangles and rectangles to make them look imposing and sturdy, conveying danger. However, one of the most critical elements in the environment that bring meaningfulness to the game is the sand. It is almost everywhere you go, and it sometimes even helps you get from place to place as you slide down on it. It brings delight to the player as they surf down the hills. The sand is present in almost all the stages, which show its significance. However, that can be expected from a desert. It has the same purpose as the ground in other games, example, Zelda. The only actual use of the sand is to surf on it in some areas. Otherwise, it just gives the game a different mood and beautiful scenery, as it reflects the sun and makes it look like there are diamonds on the ground. This is both emotive and engaging for the player. The figure that the player controls is a mysterious creature which wears an orangey-red robe with a scarf attached to it. The scarf gets longer when you free and interact with the small cloth pieces scattered around the map. The longer it is, the longer you can fly for, which makes traveling a bit easier. However, if one of the guardians attacks you, then the scarf will get shorter. It is impossible to die in the game, but it makes running away from the Guardians harder. Another exciting feature about the figure is the face. It is a black oval with 2 eyes and what seems like an eyebrow. This lack of detail makes the player connect with the character faster and on a more emotional level. The experience is more engaging because the player can easily transport themselves into the character. The connection with the figure increases the empathy of the player, allowing them to explore the land as if it were them. This feeling can be increased when a second player joins the journey. You will never know who that person is, but that does not matter, as again, it makes the game more meaningful and engaging by removing any possible ways of discriminating others. The only way to communicate with this person is through the sound cues that you make. Therefore, a firm bond is made between you and the other player. Instinctively, you want to help this person and see them succeed with you. You look out for each other and make sure that no one is left behind. This is what makes Journey beautiful. You can have such a rich experience without saying a single word. Dramatic gameplay. During the gameplay, there will be a cutscene every time the player meets the ancestors, which lets them discover more about this land's history and themselves. Another part where the player will be shown a cutscene is when they transition from one level to another. This makes the gameplay smoother and more enjoyable, as well as engaging the player. Sometimes, the camera angle will change to show the player something important, or to make viewing something more natural and more accessible. Music. Music also plays a significant role in the game. It is critical in creating emotional ties to the world and revealing the inner working of the story. Journey opens with this massive crescendo of orchestra and white noise before cutting to silence. This acts as an auditory palate cleanser for what lies ahead, and surprisingly, it's the last we hear of Journey's famous orchestra for quite a while. The music at the beginning of the game is almost entirely this droning, buzzing electronica that to me sounds like the harsh, relentless desert sun and desolate land that you find yourself in. Over the course of the game, this electronic noise will slowly be replaced by an orchestra. Our first glimpse of the orchestra happens in the third area, when you witness the meteor. By the time you finally reach the summit of the mountain, the music will be entirely orchestral, but for now, it is only the atonal noise. There are 5 instruments that Austin chose as soloists to carry the score, the first being the cello. The cello is the foundation of Journey's score, being the only consistent instrument throughout it. And this is because the cello represents you, or rather, the red-robed journeyer that you control. Very early in the game, we are introduced to the second soloist, the bass flute. It first appears when you receive the magical scarf that allows you to fly. It pops up again when you do things like releasing the flying scarf bits, and most notably, it features in the confluence scenes in which you meet your ancestors. So, the bass flute is representative of these ancestors and the civilization of people that they and the journeyer belong to. There are also two soloists dedicated to your companion, the harp and the viola. Whenever you are connected to another player, the harp and viola are seemingly added to whatever music is playing, and their level in the mix is actually dependent on the distance between the two of you. The closer together you are, the louder they will be. This makes the game less empty, as well as adding a lot of beauty and complexity to the music, which is now able to form harmonies and counter melodies. The fifth and final solo instrument is called the serpent. The serpent is an old 18th century instrument that's a cross between a brass instrument and a woodwind. You mostly hear it in the cave area where the guardians roam. This area has a very different tone to the rest of the game, and it is a huge contrast to where we just were, sand surfing through the ruined city where the music is the most orchestral and fun it's been up until that point. The serpent is the only brass-like instrument in Journey's score, and it gives a low, resonating hum, which Austin then layers on top of itself over again to create an ominous sound. The otherworldly hum of the serpent is reinforced by the cave area. It's the only section of the game not featuring the cello, and it also sees the return of the electronics found at the beginning of the game, bringing back the feeling of isolation in the foreign land. After the cave, the score continues on its orchestral trajectory until finally blooming to a full orchestra in the track Apotheosis, which plays as you approach the mountain's summit. So even though it's not one of the five soloists, you could say the orchestra also represents something. The end of your journey. It represents the mountain. At the very end of the game, you walk into the light, hopefully making it evident that the journey is a metaphor for life. As we do so, the very last thing we hear is one of the first things we heard. The solo cello performing the main theme one final time. This perfectly mirrors the title screen at the beginning of the game, giving the whole experience a cyclical nature. It's only through the music that we know all this. Firstly, as it is the only link to the hero's journey outside of the name of the game. But also, at this moment, the first time we hear the orchestra is when we see the meteor, which we now know is the spirit of a journeyer returning from the mountain. The orchestra doesn't so much represent the mountain itself, but what the mountain represents, which is the final goal of your journey. All these little elements create a more engaging game by weaving themes into music so that the audience react on an emotional level. It creates the perfect atmosphere, and it works so well that it is almost unnoticeable under the visuals. Instead, it meshes with the visual and narrative to create a powerful, immersive experience. Much like films, music amplifies the emotional response of the player and engages them through the triggering and powerful emotional